a really good actually do anything, but it looks incredibly cool, and it's all about design. You know, everybody knows what the Eiffel Tower is and where it is. It's really, really strong in terms of design, but when it comes to story and practicality and what it doesn't do much. So those are the sort of things I'm talking about when you simplify and let design do the talking. Okay, that's introductory thing. I'm going to simplify it, and I'm going to use, like I said, clip art to the ridiculous extreme, but it starts off, what we're going to talk about here is the visual design six-pack. And if you can't remember that, then there's something wrong with you. So six-pack, we've got 6 elements that I'm going to talk about tonight. And we'll just shuffle down that list one at a time and move our way through. So starting off with single point. Push forward, there we go. Single point. We're talking about basically one small element within a frame. You can't get any simpler than that. So the keys to single point are the position of the element, the separation between the element and the background, the context, like what is the negative space, and then scale. Those things can all change, and it'll change the sense significantly. And I'm just going to work through that image and do exactly what I just talked about. We'll start with this one. Back to the picture. Let's move the subject around the frame and explore what's happening and just get a sense of what the story tells you. So we're starting with the ice skating guy at the top left hand of the side of the picture, pretty close to a third point if you really want to talk about that sort of stuff. But he's moving into the frame, he's got everything, you've come from left to right as you come in, so it feels inviting, it feels relaxed, and it feels like there is a place for things to happen into. If we move him across, and now put him at the bottom in the middle, and it's exactly the same picture as each you can actually see, it's just this, the ice skater's moved around in the frame. Now he's in a really static position, slammed bank in the middle, right at the bottom, and it feels like it's not moving. It just feels static. If we move him across to the side, now there's an element of tension. Where's he going? Why is all that stuff behind him? What's happening here? Is there a reason? Is he escaping from something? All of those things come into your sense as you look at that picture. And all I've done is moved the guy around in the same frame. How about you change the aspect? Exactly the same, but now there's a whole different feel again, and we've just changed the aspect ratio of the picture. A different feel in the negative space this time, as opposed to where the guy's positioned. And scale. If I go backwards and forwards, you'll see that he's grown a bit. He's a bigger subject than the first one, but how does that affect things? Does it really change things, or is the position stronger than the scale? That's the question you kind of need to ask yourself and have a look at when you do that. There's 3 pictures here that could be described in exactly the same way as guy sweeping the ice, effectively is what it is, and it's in Beijing at the Winter Palace, just if anybody's interested. So they go out and sweep and tidy everything up, and there was people sweeping the ice. There's one person sweeping the ice, there's another person sweeping the ice, and there's a third person sweeping the ice. But they all felt different. And what actually changed in terms of the subject? Nothing. Let's just go backwards through them again. That's where the position where the guy is at the top left-hand side is significant, and the shape of where he's going and where the broom's going. Go back one. Again, he's on the other side, but there's now some lit bits on the ice which are significant. We go back again, and now the guy's at the top in that vertical crop. So, as I said, 3 pictures, all single point, all quite different, even though if you were asked to describe them, you'd probably say exactly the same thing. So let's summarise single point. Single point is all about the relationship between the single point object and the negative space. So next time you're photographing something which is a single point object, just think about that and the relationship that you're trying to talk about. Right, number one. Moving on in the six-pack, the next one is line. Lots of you have done this and talked about line as one of the simpler ones that we've done some exercises with. You can walk around in town and make pictures of lines, leading lines, lines everywhere, so that's part and parcel of things. So a line could be horizontal, vertical, oblique, or curved, or it could be an edge, or it could be a line. Do they act the same way? It's just something we need to think about. Let's start with a horizontal line. What's the feeling here? I think the feeling is of stability, calm, and weightful. It's solid. It doesn't feel like it's going to tip over, and it doesn't feel like it's going to move. We could also probably think about that building in its entirety as a shape, which we'll get onto a bit later on. It's a rectangle. But I actually think the lines, the red and white, are strongly lines, and the roof itself is another rectangular shape. But then you get an edge on the edge of that roof that they're all acting exactly the same way. So they do create this sense of stability, calm, and weight. Tip the whole thing around the other way, and now you get a whole bunch of vertical lines. And what do vertical lines tell you? What are you sensing when you feel vertical lines? Formality, stiffness, strength, and power is what I kind of sense about it. In order to stand vertically, it has to be strong. And that's the essence that comes across with a range of vertical lines. That applies in this sort of urban environment, but it also applies in the natural environment. Here's an interesting comparison. Let's start with some vertical lines. Oh, we've got a single point in here as well. So they all work together. It's not a one or other. But let's just look at these vertical lines that way, and now tip them the other way. Absolutely nothing's happened to the picture other than I've rotated it through 90 degrees. What's the sense that way versus that way? What does it contribute to? Okay, so horizontal and vertical lines. Let's move on a step to oblique lines. And I'm going to just draw a bit of a distinction here between oblique and diagonal, and Freeman Patterson will be listening to me saying this on the other side of the world and delighted in it because he rammed it down our throats at this course. You weren't allowed to say diagonal if it didn't come from one corner to the other. A diagonal is across the complete frame from one corner to the other. It can go either way. An oblique line is anything else on an angle within the frame. So there's Freeman's difference between oblique and diagonal. But anyway, there's a couple of oblique lines. What do they do? There's a dynamic feel to them. There's an element of tension, and there's a feeling of potential movement along those lines. Typically, leading lines that bring you into a picture are oblique lines, and they strongly pull you into a picture, and that's exactly what's happening here. Here's another example of being pulled into the picture, into the foggy space in the distance. So that's oblique and diagonal lines on the extreme. Next one. Curved lines. Rhythm, elegance, and flow are the things that I associate with curved lines. So if you compare something which is straight and even horizontal or oblique, it doesn't really matter. It's a straight, solid kind of a feel. And now you add some curves, you've added rhythm and elegance to the picture. And it doesn't have to be an actual line. It can be a sense of flow, an implied line as you swing round and up those stairs. That's not actually a line there, but it is a feeling of flow up the stairs. Or it can be an edge of something. In this case, the edge of the foam sort of curves around and gives an elegant flowing feel that pulls your eye in an elegant way, if you want to put it that way, rather than a straight line that pulls your eye up to the bridge in the background. So it's just the way that kind of works. So, summaries about lines. The form of the line and the position of the line determines the energy that's portrayed. Back to the six-pack. Number 3, shape. There's three kind of primary, there's three shapes, full stop, or the versions thereof. Triangles, rectangles, and circles. You can talk about primary shapes, where you talk about an equilateral triangle and a square and a circle as the primary shapes, where an ellipse or any other sort of odd-shaped triangle or a rectangle or even a parallelogram is still kind of a rectangular form, but those are sort of sub-forms of the same thing. But let's just have a look at how those fit together. And often this can be something you often do in sort of analyse your image, going, oh, actually there is a triangle there, because your eye picks it up before you do. If you start to recognise those shapes, instead of thinking of them as things and think of them as triangles at the compositional stage, the reason for doing this is it'll help you to arrange those shapes, and that's what John's going to get onto next week. So what we're talking about here is recognising the shapes that are there and then starting to use them to arrange your frame. So we look at this picture and then we go, wow, look at all those triangles. They're kind of everywhere. You can draw triangles all over everything, but they actually are there when you look at it. And I found that composition worked reasonably well, and that all positioned to one side, but it all fitted together because of the triangles. Triangles often sit within a frame, so this is a relatively small triangular form in the corner of the frame, but it adds a huge amount of energy to the skater and her instructor as they work through just in the context of the rest of it. And the rest of the thing is effectively just negative space. So once again, the little triangle can be treated as a single point within negative space. So all of these things add on to one another. Sometimes the triangles are just implied. In this case, there's an implied triangle between the three guys, but there's heaps and heaps of circles repeated all the way through the whole form as well. So circles and triangles come together. If we look at this one, now we start to talk about rectangles and how rectangles give structure to the form. So we chop the frame into two. I've got a big rectangle at the top, which is the sky, which draws my eye in, but then there's a solid base underneath of the city and as it moves forward. But you could also think of that bottom bit as a triangle. So now we've got this solid base on top of an unstable triangle with a point at the bottom. So there's an element of tension built into that instability because of the form that's been used there. So I think the tension in the bottom part of this image perhaps has been created by that triangle. Okay, squares and rectangles. There's lots of them here, and they all fit within the frame. There's bigger and smaller ones. There's one inside another and all that sort of stuff. And what I think that this image is made up of with all these squares is like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that fit together and work with each other. However, the most significant storytelling element within this picture is not those squares, it's that implied line between the eye lines of the grandmother and the granddaughter. It kind of tells that off. But the rest of the picture space being arranged with those squares allows that to work. Here's another one which is squares within squares, that you're drawn one step at a time into the picture until you find a little bit of interesting happening going on right in the corner of the frame. This is an interesting one. I think you could make an argument that there's a strong triangle starting from the guy in the middle as they crouch around the mahjong board, I think it was, I'm not sure, but I actually think it fits better as a circle because the heads are all there and they're all looking in together, and that sort of, the fact that the circle is an inclusive form really helps. It just brings things together more than sits solidly like a triangle does. So I prefer to think of this one as a circle. Doesn't actually matter what it actually is, but the point of the being was I saw and I looked for those heads to be moving together. There's, I don't know, 10 or 15 frames of this happening, and this is the one that worked better because of the way their heads came together and created that circular form. There's an interesting thing about circles. They can be obvious and complete or implied. Circles as a shape are a really strong one that has the ability to work outside the frame. So you only need to see a little part of a circle, or to a lesser extent an oval, they kind of work the same way, to imagine the rest of it. And so it gives us some context. In this case, we've got the strong circular form of the lady's face, but behind her is an umbrella that we can't even see the edge of the umbrella, but we know it's a circle. So that kind of works with circle within circle because of that sort of implied structure that happens with circular things. If you look at this, the edge of the boat, this is the ferry that goes across San Francisco Bay, and it's got a big round rail at the front. You can stand out in windy as normally, but the couple standing there are enveloped in a circle that we can only see a little part of, but we feel that energy sort of enveloping them. And here's another one with implied circles, bits chopped off that we don't need to see all of to know that they are there. And that's one of the most significant things about circles. You very rarely, or you don't need to see the whole circle to get the energy that comes from the circle. So, shapes within images provide the basic structure that we put together, and John's going to talk about putting together that structure next week. Perspective. Okay. How the world looks to us. So what are we going to talk? I don't know what the E's doing there, but anyway. Well, it does say perspective in black, so that's what it translated. Pretend that wasn't there. The aim of perspective is to emphasise the Z-active axis. So, most graphs are X and Y, and Z is the deep bit. So we're emphasising the depth within the picture. We're trying to make it look less two-dimensional. We're trying to express 3 dimensions within our two-dimensional space that we have available to us. So there's a couple of things that we kind of talk about here, and the first one is point of view. And the second one is lens perspective. So what can you change as you change the type of lens? But let's start with point of view. Where we are as the viewer and where is the subject and what is the relationship between them. At the moment, we're standing at the bottom of this large building and we're looking up at it. We can tell that really easily because we understand what those converging lines do. We probably don't perceive it that way when we stand there, but when we see a picture of it, we know that it happens. And in this extreme thing, we accept it and we go, okay, we're looking up at something. So that's one perspective, being low and looking up at your subject. Another one is eyeball to eyeball, as the tiger contemplates his lunch. So this is kind of level across and we're looking straight at him. And that is really exaggerated, and I get a strong sense of eyeball to eyeball in this case. Fortunately, the sort of hazy line is wire between him and me. So, and the next one is who stole the last piece of chocolate cake, and I get a sense of the, I think Michael was his name, but he definitely did steal the last piece of chocolate cake, and that's pretty obvious from this situation. But here we've got a relational situation where he's looking up at me with my camera looking back down at him. There's a friendly feel to it because of, just the glint in his eyes and the smart aleckness of pinching the last bit of cake, but there is definitely a relationship feel and a depth thing happening with that extreme point of view, or that looking down, looking up thing. If you take an extreme point of view like this one with the horse, there's a kind of an implied trust here because of the absurdity of the angle. You've got to be pretty much lying on the ground with a wide-angle lens, and the horse has to be pretty tame. So, yeah, this is fizz. So that's point of view, where you are, where the subject is, and how that works. So now let's have a look at lens perspective. The choice of lens will affect the view of the world. That's something we kind of know and understand intuitively, that we're going to get different effects with different lenses. So with a mid lens, normal lens, we get a moderate sense of depth and closeness to the subject, and a moderate sense of depth and closeness to the background further behind that. If we go in with the wide angle lens, we get an exaggerated, sometimes distorted view of the subject, and the background now becomes far in the distance. So that's what we've achieved with a wide angle. And now with a telephoto, we've got the whole thing flattened. The subject looks really close to the stones and this side of her, and the sea in the background is relatively close. The whole scene is compressed. You will notice in those three pictures, if I go back through them, that the subject has remained essentially the same size. So I was not standing in the same place is obvious. So that's the kind of key to that. You have to move in order to get the subject in the same space in the picture space. So there we go, lens perspective. The choice of lens creates the visual perspective. But is it really the lens? I'm going to contend it's got nothing to do with the lens, and I'm going to show you something that I think will achieve that. Let's take a 50mm on the left and a 200mm on the right. I've kind of crouched down a little bit with the normal lens, so things are a little bit higher, but this tree here is that one on the 50mm lens as opposed to the 200mm lens. But let's take that little piece and enlarge it. And now compare them. Is the perspective any different? Is the background compressed? Is the subject look any different? Is anything any different? No, it's not. Because it had nothing at all to do with the lens. Those perspective shifts I just talked about had nothing to do with the lens. It has to do with where I was standing. Okay, so that's the thing that you need to kind of grasp in your head when it comes to just to zoom in is not going to necessarily be the best solution to do something. You need to decide where you want to be standing in order to get the relationship between the background and the subject, and choose the lens that will give you the field of view that wants that'll work that way, not just crop tighter because I can't be bothered taking 2 steps forward. That's one of the best things about prime lenses. It requires you to use your feet to zoom and consequently start thinking about that sort of thing. So in summary, vertical perspective, in other words point of view, defines the relationship between the subject and the photographer. So it's all about a relationship thing you're showing there. And lens perspective defines the subject between the safe subject and the picture space. So you can make some choices to exaggerate things in that area. Right, we're up to texture and pattern. Texture and pattern. What does it do? Texture and pattern defines shape, and you can have regular or you can have irregular textures, and they achieve slightly different things. So starting off with a really flat lit situation, not much in the way of shadows, but we do have textures, different textures of the egg and of the towel it's sitting on, and the tones are all about the same, the whole thing's just kind of flat. The only thing that is telling us that there's an egg sitting on a towel is the texture of the various materials. Here we have rocks on a beach. The shapes are separated and exaggerated via the various textures. The texture on the rock is different to the textures between the stones. So that's rocks on a beach. This is also rocks on a beach, but this is more about conformity and continuity. It's kind of vast. You'll notice that the little irregularities draw your eye when it comes to this. You probably might have noticed there's some little specks of green glass. You might have noticed there's slightly bigger rock. Everybody will notice something else that's slightly different, but your eye looks for separation in that thing and that field. You are comfortable with looking across the whole thing, but you tend to grab on subtle differences. This texture has sort of a continuity, but it has less regularity. This is extreme regularity. This is irregular, but it's fairly consistent. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do with textures to change things up and to change the feeling and the sense that's coming across. Regular with repetition here, and now we're back to the single point thing again. We've got all these shapes that are all the same in the background, and we've got a feather which is by colour a little bit different, but it's actually similar in terms of form, and how that's arranged makes a difference. And if you take this into the landscape, the distinct areas have different textures. So there's one sort of texture in the tussock in the foreground, there's another texture in the rock and the hills in the background, there's another very flat texture in the sky, and there's a fourth kind of puffy cloud texture in the clouds. So there are 4 different textures that separate the picture space out into 4 different things. So in summary, light defines texture. If we go back to that first really flat image, it was the texture wasn't strong, but you were able to see it. But if you'd increased the exposure and punched the light up, the texture would have been more extreme. But texture most definitely defines shape. Right, the last one, value. So colour or tone. Once again, same sort of thing in that it defines colour or value, defines shapes. Colour does a few other things as well. It accents things, points a big arrow at something. There's an implied meaning in a lot of colours that it brings to the game. And there are relationships between colours that change throughout the whole thing. And we'll look at the end, monochromatic tones, how we make tones do the same thing. So we start off with colour and colour accents. The warm light in the lighthouse pops considerably more when it's shown against the blue sky. I had in my earlier presentation, this is a black and white, and the whole thing still popped, but not anywhere near as much as when you have the orangey warm tungsten light in the lighthouse and the blue sky. Blue and gold pop. But whatever is different pops as well. We kind of do know how powerful red is, and red is definitely powerful, but what's standing out here is the point of difference. So whatever is different draws the eye when it comes to colour. And sometimes that's a problem. This is not the best picture, and Kendra's now quite a bit bigger than that. But look at the red jackets in the background. They just jump out at you. Let's look at the next one where I've, in a rather pathetic Photoshoppy way, detuned them a little bit. But if you go backwards and forwards between the two of them, the jackets and the flag go away a little bit when you detune them. The emphasis we need to have here is when you're making the picture and you're concentrating on your subject, you need to know what's happening in the background, because there'll be colours in there waving flags and jumping up and down and doing a whole bunch of stuff that if you're not aware of it when you're making the picture, they will provide a colour accent and pull the eye to somewhere you don't want it. So the key is to see what colour accents do and make them work for you. Colour meaning. And this is a bit subjective, and it changes with cultures, and it changes with people, and it changes with all sorts of things, but in the middle, that red colour is all about strength and power and energy. Kind of the more purpley is stability and harmony, maybe. Joy, happiness, certainly for the yellow. Green is always about the Green Party and environment and health and all that sort of stuff. I don't know what that pinky colour is about, but I seem to think when I did this that it was love and romance and excitement, and I'm not sure about that, but maybe it was supposed to be gold. And enthusiasm and warmth and vibrancy for teal green. That's a bit Air New Zealandish, isn't it? Don't know where that came from either. But don't take any notice of what I've decided there, because it was a while ago I made this up. But the crux of it is colours mean things to you, and they mean it to other people, so use those colours to tell your story. Let's have a look at what colours actually do, and I've been a bit liberal with my interpretation of the colours here to make a point, but the bottom line is that cool recede and cool colours recede, so the blue in the background, which is a cool colour, is kind of going away, and the warm colour and the oversaturated tussocks is coming towards you and sort of jumping out of that, and it's creating a three-dimensionality to it. Let's change it a bit and detune the tussocks. The whole thing looks a bit flat. I've increased the saturation of the blue in the background, and now that's coming forward. So the amount of saturation causes it to come forward where it was before. And if you look at the power pole, which is still pretty overcooked, that's now jumping forward at us. So let's go backwards and forwards. Definitely a structure there where the tussocks are in front. The power pole, because of its size, is behind the tussocks in sense, and then we've got a dark area, and then we've got a relatively desaturated blue, which is going back and kept going black. If I go forward, I've increased the saturation in the blue. That's reduced the amount it's going back. It's not quite coming forward, but it's not going back as much as it was before. Certainly the foreground is not anywhere near as in your face as it was before, but that single power pole now jumps out and comes forward to you. So there's lots of things happening just because of the change in colour. And if I go the whole hog and just make it black and white, it's pretty flat. So we have to do some rearranging. Let's talk about punchy, saturated autumn colours and how they kind of work together. There's no doubt that this orange, in that it's saturated, I can't remember how saturated it really was, but they are saturated in certain situations, and it is a punchy, realistic, autumnal feeling, and we do get a sense that it jumps off the background. But if we compare it against a complementary colour, it jumps off much more. That jump off feeling with the orange against the green is exaggerated. So that's a colour pairing which is significant in that sort of situation. If we knock the whole thing on the head and go to black and white, that's pretty bland. So in order to get something happening there, whenever you do a black and white conversion, you have control over the tones through all of those sort of things, and you can increase the contrast, punch things forward, and you can get a little bit of that sort of punch and push back relatively easily. But you can also simplify it a bit. And I don't know if anybody noticed the top corner, there's an extra leaf that's in there and goes out again, and in there and goes out again. That's the choice that you have when you're manipulating black and white images. Just by changing the tonality, you can simplify, you can build back that sort of dynamic feel within the image. So, summary. Colour and tone define shape. Combinations of colour can produce harmony and conflict, depending on what they are, and emphasise and help what you're looking for. So there you have it, a six-pack of basic design components, and if you just bear that in mind, what we did when we did the workshop is then we all disappeared out and went and photographed some of those elements. We looked for line, we looked for shape, we looked for forms, and we looked at colours and all that sort of stuff. It's worthwhile exercise in doing your scales that Jackie and Mike always talk about, is just going and practicing finding these sort of things and finding the various components of the visual design six-pack, complete with brilliant clip art. That's the conclusion. This is next week's introductory, Visual Design Part 2, arranging the design building blocks within the frame. There we go. Nope, cup of tea, good.
Hello, good evening.
JK doesn't have...
Come in and find your seats, folks. John, can you hear me?
No.
It is on. Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Come and find your seats, folks. JK, while you're walking up the back, can you shut the curtains, please? Thank you. That's great. Well, good to see you here this evening, everybody. You're at CPS, and we've got a really good program set up for you this evening. So CPS is the Christchurch Photographic Society, and we welcome anybody who would like to come and talk about making images. This tonight tops off such a beautiful day, sunny, warm, and plenty of gardening was done, I'm sure, across our lovely city. I'd like to welcome everyone here, members and new members and visitors. Have we got any visitors here this evening? Oh, good, welcome. And any new members who haven't been here very often? Good evening, hi, thanks for coming along. I hope you get a lot out of this evening. And we have a new member called Edwin. Is that you? Oh, that is you, great. Welcome again. So while we're here for watching and listening and learning, I'll just give you a few tips on how we make it enjoyable for everyone. Please turn off your phones and also keep them in your pockets so that the screens don't irritate other people sitting around you. The exits are over here. There is one here which I've never used, but I'm sure we could if necessary, and out the door that most of us came in if we need them, and the bathrooms are out that way too. Thanks, Diana, for organising all of the information on the email to us all about what's happening and what's coming up. Makes my job really easy, just following your instructions. And thanks also to the committee for creating a wonderful creative program of exciting things for us to learn and do. So tonight's program, we're going to have a quick video about the square photo walk, one of our showcase exercises that we're doing. So this will be the square photo walk, that'll be first. Then we're going to have John Hunt, who's secretary of the PIs, or the digitals, going to put together the results and the critique of the last digital one that we had, which was number 9. That's a competition. And Janine, you're going to be the reader of that. Thank you. So before I go off and sit down and watch this wonderful program, I'm going to let you know that we'll do a few promotions, things that are closing soon, and a thanks to everyone who's been involved after we've seen these videos tonight. So if you could just sit back, relax. Alan's going to put together this video that we've all put images in for. Thank you. Wasn't that great, following on from what Ian was talking about with visual design? My mind was listening to those 6 points from the six-pack as I watched those. Well, not that one, but the ones that were there. So now, John Hunt, would you like to come up, please, and introduce the judge and assessor? And thanks again, Janine, for reading.
Kia ora. Presentation tonight of the open projected image number 9. The judge for this is Robin Carter, LPSNZ. She is local and she wanted to be here tonight, but unfortunately she's ill. She didn't supply me with a bio, so I pretended I was a human-powered language module and scanned the internet for information. And this is what I learnt, and unabashedly copied it from the web. Robin says she's always been interested in photography, and when asked how she got into photography, she said, accidentally really. My first film camera was a Canon EOS 500, and I just happened to take a really good photo of a New Zealand fantail. It got so much admiration from all and sundry that from then on, my love was wildlife. Robin has wide-ranging interests in wildlife photography and has a tremendous love of nature and will photograph anything, from possums to weka, elephants to frogs, vultures to spiders. She has a particular interest in bird photography and has photographed birds in New Zealand and overseas, including Kruger National Park and Costa Rica. This is not to say that Robin doesn't photograph anything else. On her Instagram page, The Ambling Photographer, she has photos of architecture, landscapes, street scenes, nudes, still life, fantasy, and a whole number of other subjects. She likes to take photos with minimalistic yet natural backgrounds, so the focus is on the wildlife or the main thing, and it's not competing with anything else. Robin is profoundly deaf and has a cochlear implant. She says being deaf has increased reliance on vision, and that makes her use her eyes to hear things. Maybe this is what allows her to see things that other people miss. So the 42 images entered tonight, 14 acceptances, 7 high acceptance, 6 honours, and 1 best in show. That's a 67% success rate. You may note that Ron Williams has 2 photos in here tonight, and that's because he was a judge of the first competition, and so he wanted to be allowed to enter as many photos as everybody else. So over to you. Thanks.
Can you hear me okay? Yep, okay. Score 1, reflection in dusky sound. A beautiful spot in New Zealand to photograph, and the lake is lovely and still perfect for reflections. In my view, the overcast day has led to flat lighting and a lack of contrast. You could try adjusting both in post-production. I feel the composition could be improved by cropping approximately half the water out to the start of the reflected treetops, which would make the lake horizon sit more on the third. This horizon is also slightly crooked, so a little tweak to straighten it would also improve the overall image. Love the wispy clouds round the trees and the sharp tree line in the hills. Score 2, the tui bird. Good attempt, this image of this tui with the backyard feeder. I hope it was taken in Christchurch, as the bird needs all the encouragement it can get to be reintroduced back into the Canterbury Plains. In my view, the bird is too soft and his head is overexposed. Try increasing your shutter speed or ISO, but at the same time reducing your exposure compensation down half or 1 stop, which will control the whites. Composition could also be strengthened by cropping off the left-hand side to the red wood. The left side is very light, and because of this, your eyes are led there, instead of staying focused on the bird, which is the main part of your story. Good contrasting colours. Score 2, watchful resting. This is a beautiful, simple, strong composition. It gives me a feeling of elegance. The bird's eye is sharp and clear. In my view, the light to the right of the bird's head is overexposed and has taken detail away from the bird's feathers. You could try toning this down in post-production. The best way to expose for whites when taking the image by stopping down your exposure compensation by half or 1 stop, especially if it's a white bird. I like the minimalism feel. Score 2, Tapai. Great reflections from Tapai, turning this into a lovely abstract. Lovely complementary colours with the greens and greys. My eyes are led through the image through the curve of the green. In my opinion, the bright white in the upper right is distracting and leads my eyes away from the image. This area needs more detail. You could try toning down the highlights in post-production to see if you can bring back some cloud detail. But the best way is to expose for the whites when taking the photo by stopping down your exposure compensation by half or 1 stop. I like that you have been creative and flipped the image, and that is made for an interesting perspective. Score 2, around the first mark. You've caught the excitement and action of the big boats. The boats all look only inches away from each other and about to crash, but I'm sure that's just an effect of your long lens. Lighting has been well handled with no blown out whites. The panorama format works well here, giving a less is more approach and focuses on the action and what you want us to see, so composition is strong. In my view, the boat going around the mark in the middle, NZ, is the most important, yet this is not as sharp as it could be. You could try increasing your f-stop in this situation to increase the focal range. Really like the action captured. Ilex Cafe in a different light. This looks to be an infrared image of the Ilex Cafe. Nice sharp image of the building on the right and on the path. I like the right-hand side details of the building. In my view, the left half side of the image is overexposed with very little detail, as well as the front right. This is distracting and my eyes are drawn there. You may have to reduce your shutter speed to produce a shorter exposure to get this right. I wonder if there were lights on around this area that could have caused the anomaly. What a great way to be having fun with your camera. Keep trying. California quail. These are lovely birds with beautiful markings and colours, and you've captured the markings well. The bird is nice and sharp throughout. Great depth of field with the background suitably blurred so the bird stands out. In my view, the bird is very central. In this case, I'd like to see a little more space to the right for the bird to move into. His top feather needs to be lightened slightly against the background as it can't be seen clearly. Maybe lighten this slightly in post-production. Love the feathers around his neck. Primeval Day 201. Day 2 of the dawn time. Lovely abstract with a beautiful earthy colour palette. The lines make me feel like they are shifts of unknown amounts of time passing, and the reds and browns remind me of volcanic sand. In my view, an abstract is still in need of a focal point, and my eyes search around the image looking for one, but never rests. Instead, they wander over to the blue stripe at the far right, then down into the black area. The blue stripe seems out of place to the rest of the image, and I wonder if it was more on the third, then this would become the focal point. Good concept. Delusive. This image makes me feel there's some connection or magic is going on between the tree and the sky with the swirling clouds. It reminds me of a scene from The Lord of the Rings. Nice muted colour palette, and the composition is good. In my view, the foreground is a little dark. I feel it needs a bit of light to lead me into the image more. Nice creative image. Graceful curve. Beautiful orchids, and they're all nice and sharp throughout. The lighting is lovely and even, and the background makes them stand out. I like that some of the colour of the orchid is reflected on the background. In my opinion, your texture you've overlaid has been carefully and nicely removed off the flower and stems. However, you missed a bit on the stem on the left, and once seen, you can't unsee. Always step back, move away, and come back and look with fresh eyes before finishing up. This is such a beautiful image. I'm not going to accept it, so you're able to fix the minor detail and re-enter it into another competition. The Adventurer. I like that you've presented this image with a different perspective and angle. It's always good to be creative. There's some nice complementary colours through the image. It definitely gives me a feeling of vertigo. In my opinion, the image is overexposed, both in the sea and in the left handrail. You could try toning down the highlights in post-production, but the best way is to expose for the whites when taking the image by stopping down your exposure compensation by half to one stop. You could also try lifting the shadows to bring out more detail on the person climbing the stairs. Keep trying. PJ tilling the field. My eye is led into the story by the lines of the waterway to the people working the rice paddies, and you have managed to capture the rice paddies in 3 stages of growth. So that has all the elements of a great story well told. In my view, the image could be improved by cropping the image, by bringing the people closer, and also putting them on the upper third. This would strengthen the composition and also make your story much stronger, as that people are central to your story as per your title. The image is also slightly overexposed, so if you brought your highlights down slightly in post-production, this would also help. I know when we travel we can't always be in the right place at the right time of the day, but we can compensate by stopping down our exposure compensation by half or one stop, something we don't always remember to do in the excitement of the moment. Well seen. A standalone. It's always fun to play with refraction with shapes and lines and experimenting to see what can be achieved. Good choice of black and white to remove colour distractions. In my view, there are a few things that could help improve the image. Your light source may have been too bright. There are overexposed dots of light on the glasses. Always check where they may be coming from when you are taking the image. Close a curtain or a door if you can. The glass on the right is very close to the edge. A little more space around that would improve the composition. Always experiment by moving around and take the image on dozens of different angles to see which is the best one. Keep trying and keep having fun. Mysterious Girl. Your title, Mysterious Girl, adds an element of intrigue. The girl's face is slightly overexposed and out of focus. This could be a stylistic choice to create an ethereal or dreamy look to emphasize the mysterious aspect. In my view, there is very little detail in the clothing, which takes up a lot of the image. Within this area, there are 2 dots, probably buttons, that distract the viewer away from the girl's face. These would be best toned down or removed in post-production. My eyes are also drawn to the white stripes below her hands, as that is the brightest area of the image and the most in focus. The stripes lead my eyes out of the image. Perhaps darken that area or crop it out, as your image is about the mysterious girl and stripes take you away from her. Good depth of field with the background suitably blurred. Score 3, so this is the first of the acceptances. White heron fishing in Linwood Canal. Lovely lighting on the katuku. It's always exciting to see them around our city environments. Good composition with the bird on the third and nice reflection in the canal. In my view, there needs to be a bit more contrast, which could be increased in post-production. Eye nice and sharp. Shades of a windmill. You've done well to take this image on an interesting angle, giving the image an interesting perspective. The shadow play through the windmill blades adds another dynamic to the texture. In my view, the brighter area at the top draws your eye away from the building, and it's hard to bring your eye back down. Bright areas always distract. You could try and darken or tone down the highlights in post-production, and perhaps lighten the right-hand side of the building slightly to make it more even. The monotone treatment takes away colour distractions, so that is a great choice. Blue morning. The dominance of the blue in the sky sets a moody scene and gives me a melancholy feeling. It evokes a feeling of solitude. Well, let's face it, who else is crazy enough to be out this early? The use of the teepees as a focal point draws your eye and adds interest to the image. In my view, the branch between the 2 teepees is distracting and makes my eyes bounce between the 2. You could try removing this in post-production to strengthen the image. There is also a very light spot on the bottom left that my eyes end up on that could also be cloned out to improve the image. Always rest your eyes on your image and see where your eyes end up. If it's not where you intend, then you know you can do something to improve on it. The simplicity of the composition with the driftwood teepees on the right side offers a pleasing asymmetry. The simplicity enables emotion and storytelling, so you have done this well. Melbourne's Webb Bridge at night. I've always been intrigued by the architecture of Melbourne's Webb's Bridge, and you have exposed it well with the entrance on the right inviting one to enter. This makes it a prominent focal point of the image. The choice of capturing it at night emphasizes light and shadow, and your choice of black and white means there's no color distractions. In my view, the image could be improved by slightly lightening the entrance path on the bridge to make this stand out more. You could also darken the buildings in the background slightly to further emphasize the bridge illumination. Appealing and well composed. Barry Mackenzie. Lovely portrait of Barry. Eyes are nice and sharp and face is well lit, and he stands out well against the dark background. In my opinion, there are a couple of minor details that could be done to improve the image. Firstly, under the right ear, at the end of the zip, there's a bright white dot. Once seen, you can't unsee. So if you just cloned that out, plus the one on the left, that would keep your eyes on his face. If you also darkened the top of the hat down to the ribbon, this would also keep your focus on the face. Lovely detail on the face and great choice of black and white, which takes away colour distractions. Lost in the golden mists of time. Very creative image. The ICM of the trees is lovely, and your storytelling with this overlaid with the old cottage gives the image a sense of age. It makes me feel like someone is about to come out of the cottage in 1800s clothing. Colour palette is lovely. In my view, I feel the cottage would be even stronger. I feel the story would be even stronger if the cottage was slightly more ghostly amongst the trees. I also feel if you cropped a bit off the top to bring the cottage on the central third, you would have a much stronger composition. Love the golden tones. Street scene. This is a fun street scene, and it really looks like the girls are teasing the man on the street, yet they are oblivious to her charms. Such a shame. This has storytelling of social commentary, and it reminds me of our society where we are all so busy going about our lives that we often miss important interactions, especially if one is intent on their phone. The choice of monotone is a good one, as it takes out colour distractions. In my view, the shoes on the man with the phone are quite bright, and my eyes are led there. I would suggest that this could be toned down in post-production to give a more even lighting. The lighting is also a little flat, and if you could lift the shadows and lighting, this image could be taken to the next level. Dried leaf. A detailed, interesting leaf study in various stages of decay on a reflective surface makes an interesting subject. The high-key white background makes the leaf stand out clearly, emphasizing the detail. Lovely complementary colours, and it is sharp throughout on the top. In my view, it looks like the shadow has moved slightly with a double effect on the shadow on the lower half. I'm not sure what could have caused this. Nicely presented with a strong central dominant focus. Wetlands walk. Wetlands are such important areas for our planet, and it's nice to see that people take the time to enjoy them. Nice use of in-camera movement to give an impressionistic style to your image. The path acts as a leading line, taking you into the image and beyond. It makes me want to explore the path myself. The person acts as the anchor and focal point, but your eyes still explore, coming back to her. The sky is dark at the top, which acts as a vignette and keeps you in the image. In my view, the sky is a little bright above the girl, and if you could tone this down slightly in post-production, it would keep your eyes more on the landscape rather than in the sky. A morning at Sumner Beach. This gives me a feeling of nostalgia of summer days gone by. Nice composition and complementary colours, and the in-camera movement and texture suits the image well, by making the figures shadowy and dreamlike. In my opinion, there is an area on the lower left-hand side that is brighter than the rest, which my eyes keep moving to. If this could be adjusted to be more even, then the image would be much stronger. Good storytelling. Rising mist at sunrise. The mist adds an ethereal and serene quality to the image, which softens the landscape. The patch of sunlight across the water and on the top of the tree adds the focal point and adds depth and drama. The light on the autumn colour tree adds a splash of warm, vibrant colour to an otherwise cool scene and serves as a visual anchor. In my view, the composition could be strengthened by cropping off some of the dark patches of the lake, putting the water's edge on the third. This would turn the image into a panoramic format, which is often strong as it gives a less is more approach. The birds in the lake create movement in an otherwise still landscape, so your image has wonderful elements for good storytelling. Grand Teton Barn. Lovely picture, perfect day of the Grand Tetons. Lighting has been well handled with no blown out whites on the mountains. Lovely lighting on the barn. It makes me feel like I've landed in some Western movie. Composition is strong with the barn on the angle, and it is dominantly on the first third, which provides good balance with the mountains. In my view, the front side of the barn is too dark. If you could lift the shadows in post-production and bring out some detail, this would improve the image. Early morning at Kakanui. The use of wide angle gives me a feeling of expanse in the sunrise beach scene. The logs in the foreground add depth. The branch on the right acts as a frame and leads your eyes back into the scene. Nice warm colours on the golden sands and cliffs. Love those lashes. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, but the focus here is on the luscious lashes. The eye line and direction of the fur leads you to the point of focus. In my view, the eye is too central. If you crop a little off the top and right side so the eye is on the upper right, you'll have a much stronger composition. The whites are just a little on the bright side, and a slight adjustment in post-production to tone down the highlights would help this. Love the leading lines of the fur and the contrasts of darks and lights. A nice sharp close-up, well done. Kerr Bay Jetty, Lake Rotoiti. Strong composition with the jetty leading you to the mountains. Lots of detail on the jetty, which contrasts with the smooth water from your long exposure. The clouds also add another level of interest, and it looks like there's a face in the clouds with eyes looking back at us. The black and white treatment works really well in keeping away colour distractions. Composition is strong with everything on the thirds. Have you thought about a square crop? This would really work well if you cropped to the first posts. Woman from the Makar Valley. Lovely even lighting on this portrait. Good detail in her face, and her eyes are sharp with the catchlight in her right eye. Composition is strong with her eyes on the third. There's a slight vignette that works to keep your eyes within the image. In my view, there is a lighter patch on the middle right rock that draws my eyes away from the woman. If you darken this slightly in post-production, this would keep your eye from moving there. Good detail in the clothing and nice complementary colours. Score 4, so this is the first of the high acceptances. What's around here? The use of black and white creates a timeless and classic feel to this image and strips away colour distractions. focusing our view on the subject, light and shadows, adding depth to the scene. The little girl looks really engrossed in her exploration, and her body language rather than her face tells the story. The fact she is about to exit the frame creates a sense of movement and tension, and it makes me curious to know where she is going. In my view, the lighting on her jumper is a little overexposed, which could be brought down in post-production, but it's not enough to detract from the story. I like the sense of adventure and wonder the photographer has told in this image. The beauty of water. I think it's the connection between water and life which makes water so beautiful to us. The beautiful splash in the middle serves as a strong focal point within the image. My eyes follow the lines of the rocks and the flow of the water, and are always brought back to the splash. This is strong storytelling and makes for a strong composition. The golden light on the rocks gives the image warmth and gives lovely contrast with the cool colours of the water. It makes me feel the image is warm and inviting. The use of long exposure gives the image the sense of motion, and the lighting is even with no blown out whites. It reminds me of a Patrice van der Velden painting. Simple freesia. This is a visually striking image. The simplicity and minimalism are its strengths. It gives me a very peaceful feeling. The white flowers and the white vase gives the image balance, and the combination of the colours are harmonious. The white elements pop against the background, and these become the focal point. In my view, the green foliage is just a little dark. This could be lightened slightly in post-production. Very elegant. Blacksmith. Good storytelling with this triptych, with the metal worker intent on his craft, and you've captured some of the progression of his work in your series. It has a lovely beginning, middle and end that you lead the viewer through. Lighting is really well handled, with nothing to draw your eye away from the story. Lots of detail and everything is sharp throughout. I can just feel the heat from that furnace. Really interesting background as well, which adds to the storytelling. Frosted willow. This has a beautiful dreamlike quality, and you've mastered this technique well. Beautiful light throughout, the tree is almost glowing. It makes me feel like packing up a picnic and spending a few hours with a book under the tree. Composition is very strong with a central focus and the background blurred, but with enough interest to give you some strong storytelling of your surrounding area. Score 5, so this is the first of the honours. Dawn in the High Country. Stunning landscape and strong storytelling of our New Zealand high country at dawn. Strong composition with a panorama format which gives this image a less is more approach. Your eye is led into the mountains by the reflects in the pond, and the wide angle gives you a feeling of expanse. Well done. Katari, Sacred Kingfisher. Good storytelling of a New Zealand kingfisher and the perfectly timed crab. Very sharp throughout. Good composition with the bird on the right third. Great depth of field with the background suitably blurred. Nice colours and lighting with no blown out whites. Great catch lights in the bird's eye. Well done. Beach day ending. Very strong composition with the people on the lower right third and the long shadows on the angle. It definitely reminds me of the end of a hot summer's day at the beach, so very strong storytelling. Love the sand patterns, all those footprints in the sand. Well seen. Impression of winter. Good use of black and white to keep colour distractions away and to help tell the story of a dull winter's day. The creative impressionism technique gives you the feeling it's raining and adds interest with texture. The 4 people walking away from the camera gives me a feeling of anonymity and makes me wonder what their stories are. The middle 2 people have much darker clothing and they then become the focal point of the image. The dark light contrast around these 2 main characters is deliberate to draw your eyes to them, and they are cleverly placed just off centre, which makes for a strong composition. Out to win. Great storytelling with the determination you've caught on the runners' faces. The colours are vibrant against the overcast day. Composition is really strong, with the runners on the left running into the water with space to run into. The cloud above works as a vignette, keeping your focus on the action. It makes me feel as if I'm right there. A powerful image. Time flies. Strong storytelling. Very strong composition with the wall, flags and clouds on the thirds creates a visually powerful image. The long exposure technique you've used conveys time and motion in a minimalistic approach. The image makes me feel very serene, very creative. Well done. Score 6, best in show. Dominant performance. Fabulous detailed action shot. I feel like I'm right there and that I'm about to be splashed with water at any moment. Nicely cropped, keeping the shot action packed, and great depth of field with the background suitably blurred. The suitably muted rider in the background and the boy with all the marks and scratches add to the strong story. Love all the fine details you can see from the water, the bike, and down to the muscle form on the rider. Well done.
Is it working now? Yes. Thank you very much for reading that out. They were quite long comments. Deserve a drink afterwards, I suspect. So we can go through these. White Heron Fishing in Linwood Canal by Judy Kirk. Shades of a Windmill by Pip Wright. Blue Morning by Adrienne Gentleman. Melbourne's Webb Bridge at Night by James Glucksman. Portrait, Barry Mackenzie by Shirley Wilson. Lost in the Golden Mists of Time by John Hawkins. Street Scene by Raywin Wright. Dried Leaf by Jane Bogue. Wetlands Walk by Nola Sumner. A Morning at Sumner Beach by Penelope McCall. Rising Mist at Sunrise by John McCall. Grand Teton Barn by Ron Willems. Early Morning at Kakanui by Bonnie Steetskamp. Love Those Lashes by Neroli Keating. Kerry Bay Jetty, Lake Rotoiti by John Ben. Woman from the Makar Valley by Alistair Phillips. High Acceptance, What's Around Here by Karen McConchie. The Beauty of Water by Maxine Cooper. Simply Frasier by Diane Kelsey. Blacksmith by Anne Yuan. Frosted Willow by Joe Curtis. Dawn in the High Country by Janine Money. That's an honours. Another honours, Kotari, Sacred Kingfisher by Ian Harrison. Beach Day Ending by Ron Willems. Impressions of Winter by Newell Grenfell. Out to Win by Nicola Jackson. Time Flies by Hitchin Kim. And Honours and Best in Show, Dominant Performance by Les Armin.
Thank you, John, for organising that competition and officiating. And Janine, thank you for reading the comments. It's always good, isn't it, to see what people come up with, especially in these opens, because there is such a variety out there of images to be made. So for the rest of the evening, after that wonderful show, I'd just like to put a few promotions out there with you and ask a few questions. So the promotions coming up Wednesday the 25th of October, that's next week. John Suckling is going to follow with skills to make better images, and he's going to follow up on what we heard tonight from Ian Walls. But if you weren't here at the 7 o'clock session, just know that we're going, John's presentation at 7 o'clock next week will be arranging those design blocks that Ian brought up tonight. But if you missed Ian's, it'll still make sense what John's going to say. Oh, it is streamed. Excellent. Oh, welcome all you guys at home. The 25th of October at 8 p.m, that same night, next week, we're going to have the competition critique and results of our print number 5. So come along to that, have a look at what our prints look like off the screen and up on the wall over there. We'll also have the, to be shown, the video the video of MDC, our monthly digital challenge. And that's always a good one to watch. We have the title for that, Mix It Up. Now, closing soon, MDC, that same monthly digital challenge, will close at the end of this month, the 31st, at the end of the month. 31st, isn't it? Of October? Yeah. I wrote 30th and I thought, that doesn't look quite right, but what's the day? Success is the word for this month. And there's been lots of successes. International sport, you could find yourself pulling something together from there. Or, just the day-to-day things of perhaps making the garden grow. Your seedlings have come up, or the tomatoes started to flower. Any of those things can be a wonderful image for success. Our PI Salon, 4 entries. So you'll see from the advertising that Diana's put forward, 7th of November is when you have to have your 4 salon entries in. That's a digital selection. It's not so much a competition as you deciding what you want to do and present for next year. So the whole idea of the salon is for you to experiment with images that you think might be worthy of an award, and you can put 4 in, something that hasn't been seen on CPS or in CPS before, and it gives you a bit of a test as to how they will go up on the screen against other images that are being put forward. So you're allowed to put 4 together and all together, and on the evening of whenever that is, the next one, the next night. Okay, thanks. Yeah, we have a live show here where we'll have the judges right here, and the awards will be given that night. So it's a fun night, and it's something a little bit different. So if your image comes up at the top image, for instance, you'll get some idea that you might want to either print it or put it in a competition next year in our CPS selections. On the stage over there, we have a few trophies. If you still have a trophy at home that belongs to CPS, please bring it along, and thanks for you guys who have already done so, because we need those for the end of the year's presentations. And any prints that you have at home, bring those as well, because we need those also for the end of year. We have an exhibition, and they're going to be used in that exhibition, any of those prints that have been awarded during the year. Now on the stage you'll see a blue box, or I can see the lid. That is the blue box. Okay, we're missing one of those blue boxes. Yeah, so we don't know where that is, and actually Diane needs it. If you've got it, or if you know where it is, can you let Diane know, please, so that she can organise the end of the year prints. It's essential that we get that back. Thank you. So we've got exciting things coming up this weekend, Labour weekend. Some of us are heading up to Wellington to the PSNZ conference, and that's going to be a great weekend of camaraderie and looking at what other people are producing. All sorts of interesting things happening over the weekend there as well, and on our way, when we come back, we'll let you know what we saw. So congratulations for all of you who are going up and making the most of the weekend. And for all of you who have got an extra day holiday, I don't know what that feels like anymore because every day is a holiday. Labour weekend will be good for you. It sounds like the South Island's going to get a good lot of weather for you to interact with other people or go places. And make sure you take your camera with you. So we've come to the end of our program tonight, and I'd just like to thank everybody who put this evening together. Thanks for you guys coming here. For you new people, welcome again, and thanks for coming. For you guys at home, thanks for watching. And you guys on the desk at the back, thank you. Alan, thank you for that. Janine again, and John Hunt for organising our competition. And I think we'll call it a night. So I invite you to next week's production here, our session, and drive safely home, and good night.